Right now, Armenia has dealt Putin an unexpected blow. Yerevan is turning its back on Russia and opening its borders with Turkey. Sensational. Azerbaijan bursts in a ton of weapons for Ukraine, shells, fighter jets, and more. And all of it for the Ukrainian Armed Forces. A frontline upheaval, Z supporters are demanding blood, and Putin has gone pale. This is the end of Russian influence in the Caucasus. Poland is shaking up the information space. Warsaw has slammed Trump, and the UN is calling an emergency meeting. What happens next could lead to a global catastrophe. Finland is preparing an invasion. It's a matter of days. The Prime Minister has convened parliament. A bombshell has dropped and the Kremlin has erupted in shouting. Urgent news from the front, a powerful GUR operation. Top Russian officers have been eliminated. Drones are breaking into the heart of Russia. Moscow suburbs are burning. Russia has already started taking action in Belarus. The exercises could turn into a real invasion. Poland is gathering its troops. A revolution in the skies. The Ukrainian Armed Forces have launched a state-of-the-art interceptor drone. It can shoot down targets in seconds. This miracle weapon could conquer the skies. All this and more in our episode of Hotspot. Shock! Armenia delivers a stab in the back to Putin. The unbelievable has happened. Yerevan is preparing to open its border with Turkey, its longtime enemy. An incredible rapprochement between the countries for the first time in decades. And it's all because of the Kremlin. In Moscow, they're already tearing their hair out. This is the end of Russia's influence in the Caucasus. How is Putin's policy pushing Armenia into Ankara's arms? All the details coming up next.
A major event for Armenia. After almost 33 years of isolation, the country is ready to restore relations with its neighbor and reopen their shared border.
There are no delays on the Armenian side. We are ready to open the borders and establish diplomatic relations as soon as tomorrow.
The Armenian-Turkish border stretches for a total of 328 kilometers, from the triple border junction with Georgia in the north to the junction with Azerbaijan in the south. It has been closed since April 3, 1993, when Turkey unilaterally blocked the border, officially citing the occupation of Azerbaijani regions by Armenian forces as the reason. Back then, 3 decades ago, the Ankara government promised to open the border only on the condition that Armenia would stop seeking international recognition of the Armenian genocide by the Turks and withdraw its troops from the conflict zone in Nagorno-Karabakh. And now, in 2025, it seems that the disagreements between the neighboring countries have been resolved.
Experts believe that in this way, Pashinyan is trying to shift the focus from territorial claims to attempts to build peaceful relations with neighboring countries.
Armenia has only very recently taken a sharp new course toward reconciliation with its neighbors. It was only in August of this year that an official ceremony was held at the White House to sign a peace agreement with Azerbaijan. The document stipulates that Baku and Yerevan renounce mutual territorial claims and also cease using force against each other. And now, just a month later, Armenia is ready to let go of old grievances and start a new chapter in its history with neighboring Turkey by opening the land borders between the two countries.
This is essentially just kind of an epilogue to the August 8th meeting in Washington. When people in Armenia, Azerbaijan, and many other countries started saying that peace had come. And maybe this is a kind of encouragement for Armenia from Turkey.
However, experts clarify that the intention to open the borders should not be confused with the actual launch of local border checkpoints. Despite Armenia's clear desire to be friends with its neighbors again, Turkey will not be making the decision to reopen the border on its own.
I think that Turkey will not make this decision without coordinating with Azerbaijan.
Experts note there is no breakthrough yet, the borders are still closed, trade is only through third countries, and even diplomatic relations have not been established. And the main reason is still the unresolved issues with Azerbaijan.
Turkey's position in the Caucasus is stronger than ever, and opening the borders with Armenia would only increase the local population's loyalty to Ankara, analysts assert. Nevertheless, some experts believe that the borders between Turkey and Armenia will not open this year or in the foreseeable future. After all, discussions about this have been going on since as far back as 2020. On February 11th, 2023, it seemed that the end of the blockade was already near. At that time, the border was temporarily opened for the first time in 30 years to deliver humanitarian aid from Armenia to those affected by the severe earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Afterwards, Erdogan thanked them for their support and once again locked up his checkpoints. After all, Ankara can increase its presence in the Caucasus even without opening its borders.
This means an increase in Turkish influence in Armenia, which in turn means an increase in Turkish influence in the South Caucasus. But they say, sorry, but Mr. Erdogan has made a personal political promise to Mr. Aliyev. So even though we understand that normalizing Armenian-Turkish relations is beneficial for Turkey, Azerbaijan is still more important than Armenia.
The only thing all experts agree on is that no matter how events unfold in Turkish-Armenian relations, they will be much better than those between the Caucasus countries and today's Russia. In just a few years, Russia has lost all its former influence over the region, ceding their position to Turkey.
Russia will be completely pushed out of the region. If that's true,
and it seems that it has no levers or any means to influence this. In other words, the time has already been lost. Everything Russia could have done needed to be done back in 2020.
urgently, Azerbaijan has challenged the Kremlin. Baku is ready to flood Ukraine with weapons. But this is just the beginning. All of Moscow is in a panic. The ranks of patriots are hysterical, demanding blood. Putin is on the verge of collapse. What is really happening and where will this lead? Watch all the shocking details right now.
The special military operation has no borders and can take place anywhere, even on the Caspian Sea. Kremlin propagandists have started warning Azerbaijan. Solovyov, Gurulyov and others are threatening to go after Azerbaijani entrepreneurs in Russia and possibly even carry out a so-called special military operation, like in Ukraine.
And soon the Caspian may find itself in a situation where even NATO bases could appear there. And this is so dangerous that if you look at it from a geopolitical perspective, it could lead to consequences such that this might not be the last special military operation of our generation.
If we also go after the local guys here, who are involved in some unclear businesses, then things will change drastically. It could become much more intense. I don't quite understand, but there are other ways it could go too. The term special military operation is a flexible one, stretching along the entire border of the Russian Federation.
The reason for such hysteria is the agreements reached between Ilham Aliyev and Nikol Pashinyan. Azerbaijan and Armenia have renounced territorial claims against each other and signed a peace agreement in Washington.
The parties in their relations refrain from the use of force or the threat of its use against territorial integrity or political independence or in any other way.
Undoubtedly, this already marks a break in relations with the Kremlin, and the aforementioned document from November 9, 2020, the trilateral one, where Putin acted as a mediator, is, in fact, now history. In any case, that's how it is perceived in the South Caucasus, in Azerbaijan and in Armenia. That's unequivocal. 5 years later today, the geopolitical situation has changed. Today, the United States is acting as the mediator, and the entire configuration, the geopolitical configuration in the South Caucasus is changing.
Russia does not agree with this turn of events, and in the South Caucasus, a new round of tensions with the Russian Federation is expected. On the night of August 6th, Russian drones attacked the Orlovka gas complex station in the Odessa region, through which Azerbaijani gas is supplied to Ukraine. 2 days later, on August 8th, Russian drones attacked the Sakar oil depot in the Odessa region, injuring 4 company employees. The next day, Ilham Aliyev spoke with Volodymyr Zelensky and accused Russia of Putin's strikes on Azerbaijani facilities in Ukraine.
During the phone conversation, both sides condemned Russia's targeted airstrikes on the oil depot owned by the Azerbaijani company Sakar and other facilities of our country on Ukrainian territory, as well as on the gas transmission station transporting Azerbaijani gas to Ukraine. They also emphasized their confidence that this would in no way lead to a suspension of energy cooperation between Azerbaijan and Ukraine. Press service of the president of Azerbaijan.
Aliyev also ordered $2 million to be allocated for humanitarian aid to Ukraine.
All of this is part of the continuing and unresolved confrontation between Russia and Azerbaijan, which began with that very notable plane crash and continues to this day. And then there was the most recent summit in Washington. In other words, there is a geopolitical confrontation underway, tensions have arisen, relations have become strained, and at this point it doesn't even matter what caused it or how things are now. The strikes on the airbase, on the oil depot, are just a part of it.
Azerbaijani media, citing government sources, report that if Russia continues its aggressive policy towards Azerbaijan's interests, official Baku will begin to consider lifting the embargo on supplying weapons to Ukraine, which are currently in its arsenal. Although Russian military correspondents claim that Azerbaijan has long since made the decision in favor of supplying weapons to Ukraine.
Given that, according to a number of sources, Baku is already ramping up production of 122mm and 155mm artillery shells for subsequent shipment to Ukraine, the decision has, in any case, already been made. The only question is how this will be carried out, openly and directly, or through a chain of intermediaries and front companies.
There have already been multiple issues in interstate relations between Russia and Azerbaijan. For example, in July of 2022, there was information that Azerbaijan was supplying guided aerial bombs, and in particular was supplying mortars, 82mm ones, or other artillery shells. At that time, Azerbaijan said that supposedly it wasn't the Ministry of Defense doing this, but private companies, as if Azerbaijan were some kind of Germany, where private military companies can be involved in arms supplies and so on.
Azerbaijan has openly chosen a new ally, the United States, and Ilham Aliyev is no longer afraid of threats from the Kremlin and is ready for open confrontation. If previously arms supplies to Ukraine were kept secret, now Azerbaijan plans to openly provide weapons to Ukraine to fight against the Kremlin. And Putin has, in fact, completely lost his influence in this region.
Urgent! Finland is erupting. The Prime Minister has gathered all parliamentary leaders for a secret meeting. Meanwhile, there is panic and hysteria in the Kremlin. They were already shouting that Finland is preparing an invasion. The countdown is now in days. This could become the point of no return. Could NATO really enter into a direct conflict with Russia? Watch further for shocking details.
New threats and accusations. The Russian dictator is preparing for yet another war.
Russia has always achieved significant results and has always emerged victorious from the most difficult trials.
But that's not always exactly the case. For now, let's not recall the achievements of the great Russian army. In the past few days, Putin's cronies have been making statements about a possible war. The former alcoholic president Dmitry Medvedev has decided that Finland is preparing to attack Russia.
After joining NATO under the guise of defensive measures, Helsinki is pursuing a confrontational course, preparing for war with Russia. It seems they're preparing a staging ground to attack us.
Moreover, according to him, Russia supposedly by law deserves reparations from the Finns for World War II. Supposedly back then, they paid too little thanks to the goodwill of the Russians.
More delusions from the Kremlin alcoholic Medvedev, who likes to reinterpret history, just as Russia in general likes to rewrite it. If we talk specifically about any reparations, there were repeated consultations between Soviet Russia and Finland after World War II, during which the term Finlandization actually emerged. In this arrangement, the Soviet Union did not demand any territorial concessions or reparations from Finland, and in return received a promise that Finland would not join NATO. But obviously the situation has changed over time.
Following the alcoholic Medvedev, the chairman of the State Duma Defense Committee, Andrei Kartapolov, also made aggressive statements. According to him, Helsinki's actions are allegedly extremely irresponsible, and the country's leadership is turning Finland into a hotbed of fascism.
Finland is currently pursuing an extremely and highly irresponsible course of action by force. And in fact, it is becoming a genuine and true hotbed of fascism even faster than Ukraine. I feel very deeply sorry for the Finnish people who have been through so much and do not deserve the fate and the very difficult situation they are in now.
And Kartapolov also stated, or rather threatened, that Russia is ready to defend itself at any moment since they have everything they need. Medvedev has also spoken about this before.
We cannot simply ignore the important fact that Finland is currently a member of the North Atlantic Alliance, also known as NATO. This situation, in turn, predetermines a necessary change in our military approaches and strategies to securing the border and to repelling any possible unfriendly or hostile acts.
If we recall the well-known phrase often attributed to Churchill that the fascists of the future will call themselves anti-fascists, then Russians are very vividly emphasizing the current ideology of their state by running around accusing everyone left and right of allegedly supporting Nazi or fascist ideas. Of course, there are no concrete facts behind these accusations. But this kind of hybrid psychological aggression against Finland, against Poland, against the Baltic countries is yet another confirmation of the long-term plans of the Russian Federation. They have no intention of stopping at Ukraine, and Putin's plan largely consists of restoring the Soviet Union's influence over Eastern and East and Northeastern Europe.
These statements show that Moscow is sharply escalating its aggressive rhetoric against Finland, a new NATO member. And all accusations against it are simply a continuation of the Kremlin's well-known tactic of attributing aggressive intentions to its neighbors, thereby justifying its own militarization.
If the Finns do not respond proactively to various kinds of provocations, if the Finns let the Russians get away with both hybrid attacks and information psychological ones, or possibly in the future Finland may face similar cases to what we are seeing today with Poland, namely the incursion of a large number of drones that can only be described as part of a deliberate plan, then the Russians will try to carry out physical, concrete operations on the ground in order to seize Finnish territory.
Russia has long been building up its forces near the Finnish border. New tents, shelters for fighter jets, and warehouses are being constructed. In this way, the Kremlin is gradually preparing the ground for putting pressure on Finland.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Urgent! The main intelligence directorate, HUR, has destroyed the occupiers' command post in Zaporizhzhia. Top Russian officers were eliminated in an instant. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones are breaking into the very heart of Russia. This massive attack has turned everything upside down. But that's not all. Powerful explosions have shaken the Moscow region. And a dangerous signal. Russian troops are back in Belarus. The Zapad 2025 exercises could turn into a new invasion. Ukraine is at the forefront of the strike. All the shocking details are coming up next.
A record number of drones have been reported targeting Russia in recent history.
We have never before recorded such a huge number of UAVs passing through the Bryansk region, then the Smolensk region, heading towards the Tver, Pskov and Leningrad regions.
Residents of the Smolensk region report 5 bright explosions at the Lukoil oil depot, where the storage tank capacity for petroleum products exceeds 10,000 cubic meters.
Can you at least screw it on? What if something falls on Lukoil right now? What if we're asleep? Yeah, right on Lukoil. Look, damn.
The mayor of Moscow even reports that 9 drones were shot down in the Moscow region, which were flying directly toward the capital. And in the Luhansk region, an ammunition depot was attacked, where there was a powerful detonation for a long time afterward. People in the Leningrad region weren't getting any sleep either. Drone friends made it there as well. Because of this, by the way, even the airport in St. Petersburg temporarily suspended operations.
I don't get it. Should I chase it?
Everything was flashing.
But residents of the Leningrad region couldn't sleep for a long time since the attacks continued there until morning.
I just wanted to record a video. Where the fuck is this happening? There they are, damn it, those bastards flying.
Of course, the massive Ukrainian attacks on Russia can't be compared to the Russian attacks on Ukrainian cities. But responding to journalists' questions, the president of Ukraine explained why Patriot is not the best option against drones.
Today, the United States produces 50 or 60 such missiles per month, being the main manufacturer in the world. That's how many missiles we have for a month, while every day we are hit by 500 to 800 Shaheds. It's clear that Patriots are not meant for drones. The cost of a single missile is between $2 and $3 million, whereas a drone, a Shahed, or a Jiran costs up to $100,000. In other words, you don't fight this with that.
That's why Ukraine has created a multi-layered defense system which exists only in Ukraine and in the occupier's country.
Part of the drone, no matter how you look at it, flies low, and these drones can be shot down using fairly inexpensive methods. These are bullets, this is machine gun fire. It's cheap, effective, and quite reliable. Secondly, we have interceptor drones. According to various estimates, about 500 Russian drones have already been shot down by our interceptor drones. Plus we have light aircraft. That is, these are small planes with a single engine. And of course, the most important thing is detection.
It turns out that not only Poland has fallen victim to raids by Russian drones. Welt also reports a violation of Lithuanian airspace by 2 drones.
All these drones didn't just fly in by accident. They were being closely monitored from the Russian side, from the Belarusian side. When they flew in, the Russians and Belarusians analyzed which radars were activated first, which ones didn't turn on at all, and for what reasons. Maybe it's just broken and not working. They scanned the entire radio spectrum. How quickly did they respond? In other words, the Russians were also timing which planes were scrambled for interception, from which air bases, which pilots, with what call signs, and generally, what security systems are in place to protect the most critical and important sites on the territory of the Republic of Poland. So all of this is reconnaissance.
Nevertheless, NATO is preparing defensive measures in response to the incursion of Russian UAVs into Poland. A political response is also expected, but I'm not entirely sure it will help much.
I know that the Poles came to Ukraine to learn from our experience on how to shoot down these drones. Not to immediately scramble aircraft and spend $1.5 million on a missile to take down, well, once again, these plush drones made of cardboard. First, we'll share with the Poles, then they'll tell their own people, build their own system, and then, following their example, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Germany will do exactly the same. I think these are the kinds of measures, but for now what they can do is allocate more money for some radar installations, some sensors.
At a technology exhibition in London, an armored vehicle with a self-propelled mortar was spotted. But interestingly, it bears the flags of 3 countries, and one of them is the flag of Ukraine. But does this mean there is a possibility that this equipment will be supplied for Ukrainian defense or not?
Maybe part of this armored vehicle was manufactured in Ukraine. It's possible, and that's why they painted 3 flags on it.
Nevertheless, there is information that the Germans have classified the list of their new military aid to Ukraine. It's possible that the supply of equipment is indeed under discussion, but the list itself remains undisclosed.
The world is in shock. An explosive reaction from Poland. Sikorski put Trump firmly in his place. The details will surprise you. And that's not all. The UN Security Council is convening for an emergency meeting. NATO admits in a panic. The alliance is powerless against the Kremlin's cheap drones. Meanwhile, the US is preparing to deliver a decisive blow to Moscow. Watch for all the details.
US President Trump stated that Russian drones may have entered Polish territory by mistake. In response, Polish Foreign Minister Sikorski stated that Putin has been taking advantage of Trump's kindness for too long and is literally mocking him.
It may have been a mistake, but whatever the case, I am not satisfied with anything about this situation. I hope that this will end someday.
This, of course, is a sign of weakness. Well, in fact, Sikorski commented from Poland that Putin is publicly humiliating Trump. And we can also note that this is yet another political slap in the face. I think that in Poland and in Europe, there is an increasingly growing understanding that it's no longer worth relying on the United States of America.
It's about time President Trump realized that Putin is mocking him. Instead of the ceasefire that was hoped for before the summit in Alaska and serious peace talks, Putin is only launching more and more drones. First against Ukraine and now against NATO. That's why I hope we will take a series of coordinated steps that will make Putin realize that his exotic project to restore the Russian Empire will not stand.
Why should they have to fight now, there for Ukraine and tomorrow for the Poles and the day after tomorrow for someone else from among the NATO members? That's exactly what many current administrations think. Let's say Trump's administration, most likely. Well, that's at least what comes out of the statements we hear from Trump.
Poland will close its border with Belarus during joint military exercises with Russia. The Russian Foreign Ministry has already called to consider the consequences and to reconsider the decision. Supposedly, such actions will harm Poland's international partners and deal a blow to its business.
If it's just about closing the border to the movement of people, that's one thing. But if they're already preparing trenches and pillboxes, getting ready to face Russian tanks, that's a completely different kind of border closure. The Poles are not preparing for this second kind of closure. Perhaps it's some kind of preventive measure, or perhaps once again it is intended to reduce the infiltration of agents during these exercises. So in other words, there are a number of different motivations for this, all of which are related to national security concerns. But to say that there is something more significant or hidden behind this, unfortunately for now, we just don't see any evidence of it. At this point in time, based on the information currently available to us, there is nothing further that can be said with certainty.
US Secretary of State Rubio had a phone conversation with Hungarian Foreign Minister Szijjártó and assured him that Trump would not abandon his efforts to establish peace.
We are not on the verge of a peace agreement, but I think significant progress toward achieving it has already been made. President Trump will continue his efforts to end the war in Ukraine.
Trump's special envoy Keith Kellogg met with President Zelensky in Kyiv. During the meeting, they discussed in detail the pressure on Russia and new opportunities in tariff and sanctions policy.
I think he arrived specifically in particular in order to discuss two main points. These are security guarantees, which are now being actively discussed by Europeans with the participation of the United States for Ukraine. And the second point is, again, the sanctions that are now being actively prepared in Europe, and efforts are being made to synchronize them with the Americans.
Meanwhile, in the US, there have been renewed calls to designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. A bipartisan group of senators is insisting on this because of the abduction of Ukrainian children.
It's difficult to get on that list. Well, I'll tell you this. Russia deserves to be on that list. Today, we are going to introduce our bill, and we are going to designate Russia as what it is under U.S. law, a terrorist. They are doing exactly what terrorists do, raping, killing, kidnapping.
Will the White House administration go for this? Again, the answer is obvious, no. Because what he is proposing to do for both Russia and Belarus is something our media for some reason doesn't report. And considering that today it's cufflinks, tomorrow it's a terrorism sponsor, but that's not how things work.
Mr. President, please pay attention to the signature. The US president very rarely signs like this with his first name. This is a very special and meaningful sign of true friendship.
Yes, these are interesting cufflinks, each with an image of the White House. But I'll try not to be in anyone's debt.
But there's another nuance here. We see that the Senate began to become noticeably more active and engaged after such a weak and insufficient response from NATO and the United States to Russia's direct act of military aggression against Poland. They understand that if the United States continues such a weak, blatantly weak policy, then they will ultimately simply lose their tools of influence both in the region and within NATO.
While NATO is in turmoil and the leaders of the countries can't present a united front against Russia, there is a lull in Russia itself and no comments are being made. And it's quite possible that the bloody dictator is already preparing for a new wave of terror, and this time on the territory of NATO countries. Sensational news from the front. Ukraine has done it! The Ukrainian Armed Forces have launched the latest AI-powered interceptor drones into the sky. These smart killers can shoot down enemy targets in seconds. But the Kremlin, in desperation, has thrown its kamikaze drones onto the front lines. Whose technology will turn the tide of the war? The whole truth about secret developments, watch right now.
New technologies, new challenges. Artificial intelligence, having conquered advanced gadget users, is now being widely used in warfare. Today, almost no modern drone is produced without this technology. Ukrainians, of course, are among the leading UAV designers. For example, our developers are already actively testing a new interceptor drone. The Ukrainian company Varta is working on implementing an autonomous system for detecting and tracking enemy reconnaissance UAVs and FPV drones for interceptor drones based on artificial intelligence.
Certain components of artificial intelligence systems are indeed already being used in the war that Russia unleashed against Ukraine. Ukraine is defending itself with technologies that help save human resources, especially when it comes to time. Ukraine is defending itself by using technological components that maximize the efficiency of drones, especially in the final meters as they approach their targets, when control over the device is already being lost.
It has been reported that the drone will be called Varta Dozor A1 and is already in the final phase of testing. Its main task will be to destroy Russian strike UAVs, which are launched daily against peaceful cities in Ukraine.
We're talking about Yerevan, Gerber, Faraday, and other drones. Currently, at present, overall, Russia is capable of producing and deploying approximately 5,000 to 6,000 such drones per month. So, the largest attack we've seen so far involved up to 500 drones, but in order to carry out such an attack, Russia needed at least 3 to 4 days to accumulate them.
It has been stated that the Dozor A1 will be able to independently detect and destroy enemy FPV and reconnaissance UAVs, even under electronic warfare countermeasures. This means the drone can be used directly on the front line where there are plenty of targets for it literally every minute. After all, Russia has significantly increased its use of drones recently.
After striking an enemy aircraft or drone, it detonates and its shrapnel destroys the enemy drone.
However, drone warfare, as they say, one-on-one, still allows for the possibility of a miss. No matter how hard artificial intelligence tries, some Russian drones are also equipped with countermeasures. That's why engineers are already working on improving the Dozor A1.
In the future, integration with situational awareness systems is planned, particularly with the Delta system. If this is implemented in the future, it will allow a single operator to control a group of 5 to 7 interceptors, creating the concept of the so-called small sky, an air defense segment where interceptor drones will play a key role.
Russian designers are also trying to catch up with our engineers. For example, one of the enemy's new developments is the BM-35 kamikaze drone. A video of its use in the center of Sumy recently appeared online. Our experts are currently studying the characteristics of this UAV. It is not yet known what kind of warhead it can be equipped with. However, the lawnmower engine and the propeller drive system indicate that the drone does not fly far and will not be used against military targets, but was obviously developed specifically to terrorize civilians in frontline cities.
We are currently fighting against a dangerous and aggressive enemy, one who does not value human life at all. And we need to be very careful and extremely cautious about the changes that are happening over there. Modern equipment can exist on the territory of the Russian Federation. Erefia can circumvent sanctions to produce prototypes, but it cannot circumvent sanctions when it comes to mass production, when there is a need to produce 1,000 units. They are demonstrating an inability to produce drones independently.
The results of the work of Ukrainian experts who studied the remains of the BM-35 at the site of impact confirmed this thesis. As a result, about half of the components are of foreign origin.
The drone's design contains at least 41 foreign components, including ones from Switzerland, the USA, and Taiwan. At the same time, most of the parts come from China.
According to analysts, one of the significant levers of influence on the situation could be the tightening of US and European sanctions, as well as more thorough enforcement of existing restrictions. After all, the more Russian loopholes are closed, the fewer drones will end up flying over the heads of Ukrainians. And at the same time develop our own technologies so that Russia receives an appropriate response for every new terrorist attack.
That's all for now. And for more breaking news from the front, tune in to our next episode.